41 years ago, the world got to see Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th franchise on the big screen for the very first time. Well, not exactly. When the first movie came out in 1980, the viewers saw just a glimpse of Jason when he was still a little boy. Many classic horror films have been widely popular for decades, and some of the highest grossing horror franchises have developed a loyal fan base that has spanned from generation to generation. The Friday the 13th franchise falls into this category. The franchise has made about $445 million at the box office. To this day, Friday the 13th has had 12 movies under their belt, and it has ranked as number 1 as the longest running horror movie franchise. I've seen all the Friday the 13th movies now. Some were good, and some of them were just really bad, and they didn't really age well. In this video, I will give my opinions on what I thought about the movies and why Jason Voorhees kills. If you guys have not seen the movies of this franchise and would like to learn more about them, I would recommend you to go watch them first, because I will be going over key moments of the franchise. Fair warning. Without further ado, let's get started. Never have I ever seen a Friday the 13th movie all the way through until Freddy vs. Jason was available to buy at the stores. When I was younger, I saw glimpses of the movies on TV. It was the scene where one of the girls fell to the floor through a window. The camera then immediately showed a man wearing a hockey mask. To me, the design of the character looked cool. He was a man who was wielding a machete and also had the cool mask on the whole time. I then immediately noticed that Jason was after the girl who fell from the window and wanted to kill her. To be honest, I didn't keep watching the movie, not because I was afraid or anything like that. I was just searching for the channel that had cartoons on it. Around this time, I was around probably like 9 or 10. The second time occurred with me finding another Friday the 13th movie like a month later. This time, I was getting ready to sleep, and so this time I decided to actually watch this movie all the way through, or what was left of it. It was somewhat the same thing that was happening when I first stumbled upon the first time I saw a scene from Friday the 13th franchise. A girl was being chased by the man with the hockey mask and was trying to kill her. I was wondering, what was this guy's deal? Why does he keep going after people and trying to kill them? So I kept watching the movie, and then his face was revealed. I was in complete shock. Even the lady who saw Jason's face was even more shocked. I'm glad I wasn't her. So close to the ending of the movie, it seemed like the girl won at the end because she was headed to the water with a canoe she found nearby. When she woke up the next day, I was in shock again to see Jason alive. He was waiting at a nearby cabin to kill the lady. He flew the door from the cabin wide open and ran after the girl in the water. While the girl was trying to move a tree branch and saw back to see Jason, it turns out that she was just imagining him. I was relieved that she was just imagining it, but then a huge surprise popped out of nowhere. A dead looking corpse that looked like an old lady took the girl inside the water with her. Man, was I terrified of that scene. The segment showed that the girl survived, so I was left confused on that. And on that last shot, I got to see Jason laying on the ground, possibly dead in the lake once again. The movie was over and it was time for me to actually go to sleep. I was a little bit scared because I kept thinking of the horror I just watched. The good thing is that I didn't have any nightmares that night. Since I was very familiar with Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and saw Jason from the Friday the 13th, I got to watch both of these horror icons clash in this epic movie called Freddy vs. Jason. The movie was still scary at times, but it mostly was action for me. I was going for Jason to win against Freddy. Like I said, it was just a cool crossover to see these villains fight one another in this epic movie. Now going back to the Friday the 13th movies, When I saw the original horror movie, I was surprised to find out that the killer in the first movie was actually Jason's mother, named Pamela Voorhees. Jason's mother was going after the counselors from Camp Crystal Lake because they didn't notice that Jason drowned in the water and couldn't swim. I knew somewhat of Jason's backstory once I finished Freddy vs. Jason. The surprising thing was that it was his mother that was doing all the killings throughout the movie, since they opened up Crystal Lake years later after the 2 counselors were murdered. Anyone that considered themselves a counselor at Crystal Lake or was staying at the camp, Miss Voorhees was seeking revenge against them. Alice, who was the main character in the original movie, was able to kill Pamela Voorhees. Little did she know that might have triggered Jason to come back to life. That's what I kinda don't understand from the series. Did Jason survive when he was supposedly drowning and never told his mother that he was alive the whole time? Or did he actually die in the lake? I just really go with it. They did a great job keeping the killer a mystery throughout the original movie. Since Pamela Voorhees was now dead, Jason officially became the antagonist of the franchise. Friday the 13th Part 2 was one of my least favorite films from the franchise. The movie was very slow at times, and this movie didn't really make me care on what was happening to the characters. The only cool thing about Part 2 was the costume design for Jason. He still didn't have his iconic mask, which he always wears. Plus the kills throughout the movie, they were very brutal, and even throughout the franchise overall too. Jason is one wrecking machine that cannot be stopped until one major character kept coming back in the franchise. We will get to him in a bit. But first, let's talk about the 3rd installment of Friday the 13th. I gotta say, the 3rd installment was actually on my top 3 for this franchise. This time you actually get a bit of story with the characters presented, and we also get to see Jason wear the hockey mask for the very first time ever on the big screen. This is also the movie that scared the hell out of me when I was younger. In this movie, we actually got to meet someone in the franchise that had survived Jason once before, so it wasn't their first rodeo going against him. Her name is Chris, and she is also our lead protagonist for Part 3. She said that she sat in one of the trees in the forest and kept hearing a noise that kept coming closer and closer to her. It was Jason that came to visit Chris in the middle of the woods. She never forgot the face she saw that night and has been very careful since. Her nightmares of seeing that face transpired once again when Jason showed Chris his face. At the ending of the movie, it just seemed that she was scared for life because she was acting a little crazy and needed help. Another character I want to talk about from this movie is Shelly. Shelly was just a teen trying to fit in with his friends. He wanted them to like him, but pulling pranks that he was dead was just a little too far for his friends to take. One of the girls from the group actually did like him, but she also told him that he had to stop going overboard with the pranks of him dying. I mentioned Shelly because he was actually the person that Jason got his iconic mask from. Just like Shelly, Jason really wasn't a person that people wanted to talk to, but in Jason's case, it was because of his deformity. Kids picked on him, and maybe that could have been the reason why the kids threw him in the water. Shelly's basically almost like Jason. They both wanted to be accepted from their peers, and I believe that's why Jason wears the mask. He feels shamed and wants to hide his face from society. Moving on to Part 4 of Friday the 13th, I gotta say that this movie wasn't that bad. It was actually cool to see Crispin Clover from Back to the Future and from the movie called Willard in another movie when he was still young. Another actor I recognized was Corey Feldman when he was just a little kid. I have seen him come out in the Lost Boys movies, and that's how I recognized him. Remember that I mentioned an important major character that kept coming back in the next few movies? Well, Corey Feldman actually played a character named Tommy Jarvis. Tommy is basically Jason Voorhees' nemesis and is considered the character to put a stop to him once and for all. By the ending of the movie, we get to see Tommy brutally hit Jason repeatedly while he was yelling out, "Die, die, die," constantly. On the 5th movie of the franchise, it turns out that Tommy ended up traumatized from the experience of killing Jason and ended up being in a mental institution. He was being transported to a place where prisoners who were on the verge of joining society once again. He just had to spend there for quite a while until he was a free man once again. This movie was one of my least favorites from the franchise. In this movie, we only really get to see Tommy hallucinating that he kept on seeing Jason everywhere he turned. There was a man who was acting as Jason in this movie. It wasn't really the real Jason. Around 30 minutes in the movie, one of the patients was actually killed by another patient. It turns out that one of the medics who picked up the dead body was the father of the patient who was brutally murdered. He used Jason's name and his mask to disguise himself so people wouldn't recognize his identity. Long story short, the medic died in the movie. At the ending of the movie, it seemed like the movie makers were hinting that Tommy was going to become the new Jason since he was wearing the hockey mask. It turns out I was wrong, because on the next movie, Tommy Jarvis is a free man and he wasn't wearing the mask. I would like to think that part 5 was like a what if scenario if Tommy became the new Jason. They never really actually pulled the trigger on this storyline. Part 6 was actually one of my favorite films from the franchise. On this one, we actually did get the real Jason. On this one, the real Jason was actually dead, but he then came back to life because of the electricity that went through his body. Tommy wanted to make sure that Jason was gone for good, and so he went to go check Jason's grave at the cemetery. Tommy made a mistake because now Jason was alive again and was ready to kill once again. The cinematography for this movie was top notch. We got to see more of Jason on this one, and the storyline was actually really good. In this movie, Tommy and Jason saw each other once again, and they actually had a battle on this movie. The only way Tommy could defeat Jason was that he had to find a way to kill him. He had to kill Jason in the water, like how the legend has been told many times before. Tommy barely made it out alive thanks to his girlfriend. Jason was tied into a chain with a huge rock laying all the way below sea level. The blades of a small boat cut his neck and it seemed like he was dead, until we saw once again him staring at the camera. To be honest, I think this should have been the last actual movie for Friday the 13th. They had a really great ending to the franchise, but since the franchise was so popular back then, they decided to make 6 more movies after. Now, part 7 of Friday the 13th was about a girl who had telekinetic powers. By accident, she brought back Jason, and things weren't going to get any easier for her and her friends. For me, this movie is in the middle. It's not the worst movie of the franchise, but it's also not the best one. And that's all I gotta say about this one, actually. Now, Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan was actually the worst movie from the franchise that I didn't like. For the most part, the movie took place on a ship, and the title for this movie was very misleading. You only got to see about 20 to 25 minutes of Jason chasing the main characters around in New York. The kills for this movie weren't that bad at all, but that couldn't even save the movie either. Out of all Friday the 13th movies, I think I would not want to watch this one again. That one kill where Jason punched a guy's head off was actually kind of funny though. Bruh. The next one on the list is called Friday the 13th, Jason Goes to Hell. This one was pretty interesting. Right from the get-go, they killed Jason Voorhees, supposedly. When one of the doctors was examining his body parts, Jason somehow took over the doctor's body and his soul transferred into the doctor. The only way someone could find out if Jason was possessing that person is if they were looking at that person through a mirror. It was a cool power that they gave Jason, In this movie, they also added new information about his family. It turns out that Jason had a sister, and the only way Jason can die is if it was someone from his family. His sister actually succeeded on killing him, and that was the ending of the movie. Oh, and by the way, this was the movie that was setting up the Freddy vs. Jason movie. At the ending of Jason Goes to Hell, Freddy's hand came out of the ground to take Jason's mask with him. Man, I bet people back then, when they first saw this scene, they were very surprised and even shocked to see this in theaters. While there was no internet back then, I bet they were really surprised. For Jason X, there were scientists experimenting on Jason. It turns out all of these years, Jason couldn't die because he kept on regenerating. This one is a great one to watch. I actually did enjoy this one a lot. It was kind of strange to see Jason, a well-known horror icon, in space, but I think it actually worked out very well. I actually really like the costume design they did on him when he got a major upgrade. And last but not least, Friday the 13th, 2009. This was the final movie that they made for this franchise. And I gotta say, this is like one of the best horror movies for Friday the 13th. I really enjoyed it. It takes more of a modern take than the ones that came out back in the 1980s. And it was a pretty good one. And this one, Daniel Panabaker and also Jared Padalecki, they came out on this movie. I remember finding out that Danielle Panabaker, she used to come out on Sky High. That's how I recognized her. And Jared Padalecki, he used to come out on Supernatural. So it was cool to see them here. I put this movie in my top 3. Now that I have described the movies and gave my opinions about them, it's time to answer the big question. Why does Jason kills? In my opinion, it has to do with nature versus nurture. Nature refers to biological, genetic predispositions impact on human traits, which means that people are born to do something and have gifted talent for that one specific thing. On the other hand, nurture means one learns from influence and from the environment they're surrounded by. I believe that Jason falls into the nurture side of the spectrum. When he was younger, he was surrounded by kids that didn't like the way he looked because of his deformity. With this, after he came back from the dead, he used that hate as anger. He used that hate to kill anyone that stepped on Camp Crystal Lake. The other main reason why Jason kills is because they killed his mother. His mother was the only friend he had, and it was taken from him. In part 2, we got to see Jason have his mother's head set up in one of the cabins he was in. He cared for her a lot, and he believes that any person that steps into Camp Crystal Lake should pay for killing his mom. His kills are very brutal. He used a huge pitchfork on the second movie, for crying out loud. He is also really strong as well. He is able to break down doors, throw people from the windows, and many more things to his victims. Jason wasn't born to be a killer. Society made him that way. Well guys, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. If you guys did enjoy it and want more of these videos, I made a playlist. You should go check it out. I have talked about Chucky, I have talked about the Final Destination movies, and many more that you can guys go check out in my playlist. It is called In-Depth Horror. Go check it out guys. And once again guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, follow me on my social medias, and that's it guys. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and live to the fullest.